The man was the final boss hiding in the tower's darkest depths. He had a strength that hardly anyone could ever fight. No matter if it was a god's messenger, a legendary sword master, or even a fiery-tempered little girl, none had ever truly beaten this man. In the end, they all fell to his sword. But his strength was so great that the man slowly felt a boredom he couldn't shake. Felt more like being all alone. The huge door in front of him felt like a prison, keeping him stuck inside the tower. After a long time, Baphomet could not take being trapped anymore. He hammered his fists into the door over and over, sounding just like a wild animal losing its mind. He desperately wanted to see what lay beyond the tower, but the door stayed shut and untouched. Just as Baphomet was losing hope, a strange phone ring suddenly rang out from nowhere. The thing looked just like a toy people would play with. Baphomet held off killing the next challenger to the tower so he could figure out what it was. To stay alive, the challenger had to swallow his fear and feed the monster's empty curiosity. He didn't want to, but he still told him about the object. And because of that, Baphomet finally got a chance to touch many things from the human world for the very first time. While the lesson was happening, Baphomet's eyes were glued to his phone instead. As soon as the challenger spotted a way through the tower and tried to sneak an attack, Baphomet just casually waved his hand, and in the next second, the challenger was reduced to a bloody smear. From that day forward, Baphomet started purposefully gathering every kind of human toy he could find. But the more he touched them, the more he longed for the human world he had never seen. In the human world, people believed that if you prayed from the heart, the gods would surely grant your wish. Baphomet truly believed it, so he sat on the floor and prayed in quiet hope that one day he could finally leave the tower. But superstition was still just superstition, and as the days went by, the loneliness inside his heart got heavier and deeper. Until today, when a new toy finally appeared inside the tower, this person's power was completely different from all the useless challengers before him, and it stirred something in Baphomet that he had never felt before. Before long, the two of them slammed into each other head-on. As soon as their swords hit, Ra used the blast to shoot up into the air and land right behind Baphomet. He grabbed the fierce blue fire and slashed out with a sudden, powerful strike. But Baphomet smiled, for he could feel it. This toy was the perfect prize he had been searching for. Suddenly, a loud boom sent blue smoke shooting into the air. Once the smoke vanished, Baphomet's hidden shield was finally seen for the first time. Baphomet saw his enemy was too strong to fight normally, so he finally dropped his guard and unleashed his ultimate power. Then he charged forward once more, diving headfirst into a deadly battle with Rave. In Baphomet's eyes, Rave was a force to be reckoned with. But no matter how strong he felt, he was just a toy, and a toy can never truly beat its owner. Amidst the fighting, a voice suddenly whispered right next to him, mocking him with the thought that even if he won, he'd still be trapped forever. Just as Rave's final move was ready to fire, the perfect moment struck. Baphomet didn't have a chance to move, and the sword went right through his chest. As Baphomet locked eyes with Ra, he suddenly realized this wasn't a game but the powerful, free human he had always dreamed of. Was that strange feeling in his chest frustration? Within a day, a red window popped up saying, "Kill the hunter Rave and your desire will be fulfilled." And since he still wanted that desire, it was exactly right. Even if his body was already burning away, he stood as the final boss of the tower, Baphomet. Carried away by Baphomet's sheer force of will, he launched one last desperate attack. His foot ripped right through Ra's body. After that, Baphomet's mind just went dark. When he opened his eyes, the world looked so bright and dazzling that it seemed to glow around him. Did he finally break free from the tower, or had he truly lost his humanity? Hunters were brave souls who could step through the spatial gates to battle the monsters hiding inside the towers. At first, hunters held no special status until that one big event changed everything. When a lonely tower finally opened its gate and unleashed monsters, wiping out a third of the world's people, humanity finally learned to train hunters on a huge scale to stop it from happening again. Baphomet used to rule the Abyss Tower as the deadliest monster in history who even traded his power to become human. But now that he walked among people, all his mighty strength had vanished. Reports flooded the world claiming the hunter who took down the Abyss Tower was just a fraud with no real power. Just like that, Baphomet lost all his reputation. He traveled across the world and ended up becoming the biggest scammer ever. The Lord of the Tower was turned into a statue for the underground world, which just means he became the boss of a dungeon quarry. The tale of how Baphomet landed in the quarry began with a fake doctor. After a strength test left Baphomet badly hurt and broke, the doctor told him the only way to pay his medical bills was to give his body instead. By the time Baphomet woke up, he was already standing in the quarry, forced to work for that quack. At first, Baphomet wasn't exactly welcome there, But that didn't matter since he knew a fist could fix just about any problem. From then on, challengers kept piling up until they were all forced to quit. Before he could blink, Baphomet had surrounded himself with a whole crowd of henchmen. And just like that, Baphomet took over the whole quarry and became its boss. After a long while, even Baphomet began to wonder if he had ended up in the wrong tale. He truly wanted to become a powerful and handsome human just like Rave. But what was this wretched life of a stray dog really supposed to be? Perhaps his life wasn't so bad after all, since it was finally interesting and he had a group of followers who loved to praise him. For the first time in 1,000 years of living inside the tower, he felt a sensation he'd never known before. But then a sudden boom ripped apart Baphomet's strangely happy new life. After the explosion, Baphomet reached down to touch the bloodstains on the ground. His heart hammered wildly as his forgotten memories started to surface, making one person laugh and call it just another broken toy. The next second, a flood of pure anger burst out from inside him. He was having a great time until he wondered who the bastard was who had ruined it. That powerful feeling was instantly spotted by one specific being. Meanwhile, over on the other side, one of the quarry workers wore a wicked grin. Two C-rank hunters instantly felt the heavy presence of a legend standing before them. The Tomb Raider hunter gave a faint smile, said, "Congratulations, you're half right. Your reward is a guillotine." And just as he finished speaking, his sword cut off the man's head. Then he swung once more, slicing her lower leg and leaving her unable to move. Once it was finished, the man lifted his hand. Suddenly, a few more Tomb Raider hunters stepped out of a rough portal. The man slowly bent his knees and dropped down low. "You want the rest of the truth? We aren't real Tomb Raider hunters. We're just bandits pretending to be them." Her mind completely broke because she knew exactly how she would be torn apart and sold for money if she fell into their hands. And at that moment, she desperately wished for someone to come and save her. The man turned his back to her and sneered, "You really think someone will come to save you just because you scream until your voice breaks like a horse?" But before he could finish his joke, two fresh screams suddenly echoed from his teammates. Baphomet showed up, and before anyone knew which foolish bastard summoned him, his roar shattered the air and popped up a red window that shouted a hidden task was done, promising power to those who get angry enough for humanity. Once Baphomet read that message, he finally felt calm again. He wondered which nasty little bug had broken his toy. The moment the words left his mouth, Baphomet grabbed a bound item that belonged to someone else standing nearby. Usually, if someone picked up a weapon tied to another soul, it would instantly lose all its power and become too dull even to slice through paper. Once, Baphomet ruled the tower and had mastered so many weapons that he could automatically grab and use anyone else's weapon just by unlocking his special skill. Grabbing his weapon, Baphomet's power exploded, and he swept away the bandits' underlings before his fierce eyes pinned the man standing right in front of him. The man grinned wickedly, already guessing how strong Baphomet had become after watching the fight. Since he's stronger than a C-rank hunter but weaker than a B-rank one, his own B-rank power should be plenty to crush him. At first, everything went exactly as he planned, and his speed let him hurt Baphomet. The second Baphomet triggered his hidden power, Berserk, the whole situation shifted instantly. Berserk would trigger and kick into gear the moment his body started bleeding heavily. As soon as the trigger went off, Baphomet's strength jumped by 15%, giving him B-rank power that was strong enough to knock the man right back. The man stopped dead in his tracks as that sudden pressure hit him. Suddenly, Baphomet felt he wasn't a person anymore but a monster hiding under human skin. Before the man could even understand what was happening, one of his arms was ripped clean off. Baphomet spoke in a cold voice, saying that arm was the price for being the first to charge in, and then he swung again to cut off the man's other arm too. "This one is your gift to the quiet guy who almost never said a word." Another slash cut through, and the man's left leg was ripped off. "This leg is the debt I owe to the big guy who used to bring me food every day." Now the man was no longer proud. His entire body shook as he begged Baphomet for forgiveness. But all he got was another sharp, cruel swing from Baphomet's sword. "This leg is the price you owe the car-loving girl who tried to win me over, and the final blow is the cost of making me angry." While the man knew there was no escape, so he used his last strength to spit one final insult, calling you seriously insane. Baphomet paid him no mind at all. His sword dropped, and the man's head rolled away. Feeling that familiar surge of warm blood, Baphomet's urge to kill spiraled out of control and he roared, "Humans! I need humans!" Ding! Because Baphomet's passive berserk skill activated. He's gone wild and now desperately wants to kill humans. As the hunter behind him stumbled in pain, his cry echoed through the fog in his mind. And sadly, she ran right into Baphomet while he was in his mindless, violent rage. She looked at the woman lying on the ground, barely alive. There were only two words left in Baphomet's mind. Kill her. Right before Baphomet could bring his weapon down, the rescue squad burst onto the scene. Seeing so many living humans, Baphomet instantly turned to them and struck without a second thought. But then a hand reached out from the darkness along with a calm voice saying, "I went through so much trouble to bring you back to life, so don't get yourself killed now, just sleep for a while." The moment the voice stopped, that hand gave a quick flick with its finger. In a split second, Baphomet's eyes rolled back and he crumpled to the floor like a broken doll. In his dream, Rave stepped behind Baphomet and plunged a sword right through his chest. "When you held the tower, you never guessed you were secretly a coward, and cowards always end in ruins." The dream stopped right there, and Baphomet suddenly shot up out of bed. He just stared wide-eyed at all the strange things around him, looking completely lost. He was meant to be at the quarry, but before he could finish, a voice from the broadcast cut in to ask, "You're awake? Can you hear me, Mr. World's Greatest Scammer? I knew that face, so you really are a fraud. I'm more curious about how someone like you managed to kill the hunter we were chasing." Baphomet stood frozen in sheer confusion, wondering if the word kill meant the same guy he had just torn apart. The voice on the broadcast went on to say, "I dug into your details and found something very weird. It's strange that someone with your amazing power has no name or identity, like you just appeared out of thin air. Now, just tell me exactly who you are, because my next move depends entirely on your answer." Before the voice could finish, Baum threw a punch so hard it smashed the bulletproof glass. "You've been chattering like a monkey since the start, so why do you have so many questions? If you're curious about my identity, then go ahead and tell me who you are first. That's what manners are, you lowlife. You think I wanted to be called a fraud? You people randomly made me out to be a hero, and that hunter? Yeah, I killed him, so what? Do you expect me to feel sorry about that? You want to know the reason behind my actions? That jerk made me so angry, so listen closely to what comes next, whoever it may be. If anyone dares to cross me, I'll show them just how deep despair can sink." Behind the glass, the man finally broke into a loud laugh. Then he flipped a switch and asked, "Can you really kill me?" Having revealed himself, he waits to see what Baphomet will do next. For the instant the demon gazes upon the man's face, a strange feeling rises within him. It felt just like the very first time he met Rave. Suddenly, Baphomet shot forward to strangle the man. But after just one move, the man spun around, twisted his arm behind his back, and slammed him to the floor so hard that he couldn't move at all. Finally, the man introduced himself as Rogue, a top-secret guild dedicated to stopping the criminal hunters. "So don't worry, because we promise not to hold you responsible. So we'd love to have you come join us in this adventure. Rogue is impressed by how strong you are. So lend that dangerous talent of yours to Rogue." A few days later, Baphomet slipped into the hunter group's main office in disguise, all set to officially join the hunt. The receptionist first looked at his ID to make sure he was who he said he was, and then checked if he had any past crimes on his record. Because Manan had planned everything ahead of time, Baphomet breezed right through the review without a single hitch. Then the receptionist asked Baphomet to choose a special name for the hunter. Maman had warned him to keep it on the down low, so he had to stay quiet. After all, once he signed up as a hunter, there would be plenty of secret jobs waiting for him to handle. Baphomet only managed a faint smile. "They call me Baphomet." A few days later, Baphomet stepped into the woods to hunt down a rampaging werewolf on a secret mission. The werewolf wanted to end the fight right away, but Baphomet held up his hand to stop him and asked to test something first. Then Baphomet slowly raised his hand. He yelled, "Come out!" But the air stayed so terribly quiet that it felt awkward to just watch. The werewolf suddenly woke up and slashed at him with a sharp claw. Baphomet didn't even hesitate. He threw a punch the very second the attack came. In an instant, the werewolf's belly was punched right through with blood spraying out like fireworks, and the mission was over. Baphomet stepped out of the swirling portal. He squeezed his hand, feeling a tiny spark of strength return that was nowhere near the power of his best days. It felt like he had to keep going with this angry mission for humanity. As he was deep in thought, a figure suddenly appeared behind him and whispered, "So you're that bomb," which startled Baphomet so much he immediately spun around. To his surprise, the man standing there was Mongan. Mon shook his head sharply, asking if he'd told him to pick a low-key name and warning him about what that chosen name truly meant. Baphomet just turned his head away, showing no interest at all in Mongan's nonsense. Seeing that cold indifference, Mongan felt a heavy wave of helplessness wash over him. Finally, he could only ask Baphomet to meet in Jigu City within a few days. A few days later, Baphomet came to Jigu City with Mongan's helper, Diong. The place stretched out to meet an endless sea, filled with people from every background, each with their own unique skin tone. To Baphomet, everything felt brand new, so he acted stiff and awkward with people, driven by his intense curiosity. Luckily, Diong pulled him away just in time to stop the misunderstanding. After a pause, Diong explained that they were there to help new hunters learn the right moves. She showed Diong how to give Baphomet the phone and the ID card. The name printed on the ID card was Shamyong. Their female boss made up a fake name just for Baphomet, and from that day on it was his to keep. Once Diong handed everything over, she pointed to the door behind her, telling Baphomet to step inside. Baphomet felt puzzled because Dee wasn't following him, even though she was supposed to watch his back. Only when he stepped into the noisy venue did Baphomet realize the man was Grain, Ra's younger brother and the youngest A-rank hunter in history. Bang Juan angrily shook off Grain's hand and shouted, "You heard Baphomet's name and still defend him?" While Grain calmly replied, "I think he was right, because if Baphomet had been dealt with sooner, my brother might have escaped the tower alive." Bang Juan wanted to argue more, but Maman finally stepped forward. After he explained it briefly, the group finally decided to let it go for now. By evening, the long-awaited senior match finally kicked off. The very first to step out for a warm-up were the elite hunters Leo, Hunter Bang Ji, and Hunter Grain. After a few rounds, Bang Ji Vuan spotted Grain's weakness. His moves were too wide, a clear sign he was inexperienced. So Bang Juan thought the match would be a piece of cake. Just as he thought it, Grain disappeared from his spot and suddenly appeared right behind him. With a swift elbow strike, Graven snatched Bang Ji-han's pouch and claimed the victory. Bang Ji-hwan wasn't thrilled about the result, but since he had to lose a loss, he asked Grain who he wanted to take on next. Grain's face grew as hard as ice when he yelled out one single name. Baphomet, who had been watching the drama from the back row, suddenly froze in his seat, wondering how he got dragged into all of this. Bang Juan was just as shocked to see an A-rank hunter dare to challenge a brand new one, wondering if this was just a joke. Even the referee standing right next to them wished Grain would take a moment to think about it. Perched high above, Maung found the entire spectacle quite fascinating and gave his full approval for the duel to go ahead. Baphomet knew exactly what Maungun was thinking. He stood there just to see the other guy take a beating, hoping it would show him exactly where he stood. Since Ra's younger brother, Grain, was already a top fighter and Baphomet was too hurt to win, he knew the smart move was to give up at just the right moment. Just as Baum began to think that, Graven had already lunged forward and swung a punch. Baphomet tried to block with his hand, but Graven instantly changed his move and seized Baphomet's arm. Then he took him down with a perfect shoulder throw. Right after that, Graven brought his fist down so hard and so fast that Bayomek couldn't even move fast enough to dodge it. Luckily, the punch just scraped his cheek and knocked him right to the ground. Baphomet cursed inwardly, realizing this kid had no plan to spar and was just here to beat him up. Maybe that was perfect, because Baphomet seemed to enjoy a strange thrill in it. Just as Baphomet started to get excited, Grain suddenly brought his fist to a halt. He suddenly ended the game by saying, "Let's stop. This means nothing," and Baphomet froze right where he stood. He was just starting to get excited when the match ended way too easily. Before anyone could react, a sudden rush of pressure slammed against Baphomet. His shadow fell over Grain silently, and in that instant, she felt the cold grip of death. His body reacted on pure instinct as he kicked back with every bit of strength he had left. But the moment the kick sailed out of his foot, Graven saw he'd made a mistake he couldn't undo. Suddenly, the window exploded into a loud crash. Baphomet flew through the air and landed with a splash right in the swimming pool. His body wasn't broken, but he had a real trouble. He didn't know how to swim. With his mind foggy, Baphomet thought he saw a blonde beauty walking toward him. They stared into each other's eyes while swimming beneath the waves. The next second, survival instinct took over and Baphomet grabbed onto anything around him he could possibly hold. And that's when the most dramatic scene of all began to unfold. A moment later, Baphomet jolted awake. He patted his head, which felt as heavy and damp as if it were filled with water. As he turned to look, he saw the blonde woman who had saved him lying next to him, looking like she had passed out. Suddenly, a voice called out from above, "And before I could move you, I made you look away." That scared Baphomet so much that he leaped to his feet and backed away fast. But to his shock, two more women were already standing right behind him. Right then, Mong showed up with his helper. The moment he saw the person standing there, his heart nearly stopped because it was Echidna, the representative of the Ark Guild. Ma Sanong-won was just about to speak when Echidna turned his ear away, showing he wasn't going to listen at all. She commanded Unhai to dive down and gather the hair from beneath the waves. Then Unhai leaped back to safety and gave the strands to Echidna. Ma Sanon felt the trouble starting right away and knew this wouldn't end easily. Echidna hissed, "That man didn't just crash our guild's party. He stole something vital from us. Do you know what it is?" Ma Sun stared, puzzled, and asked, "Isn't that just hair?" Hearing such a casual remark snapped a child right into a rage. This isn't just hair. It's the prize we won after renting an expensive salon, forcing that lazy girl into proper care, and spending countless nights to make every single strand worth its weight in gold. The moment she spoke, the room grew quiet and suddenly felt strange. After a long silence, Mon slowly asked how she wanted to deal with it. Echidna stared at Baphomet and gave a plain reply. I'll take 1 million for every strand. With 116 strands, that adds up to 116 million. Hey up. Baphomet instantly flew off the handle and let out a roar, wondering if spending that much money on just one strand of hair actually made any sense. What are they supposed to be? Toys worth all that money? No, humans! He shouted, and the room went quiet with shock. She is a nearly S-rank hunter known as Faga, who is not only incredibly strong but also breathtakingly beautiful. She's the top pick for advertising models, and you honestly don't know her? Echidna jabbed a finger at Baphomet and snapped, Stop talking! Pay what you owe or let your body be the price. Words that instantly dragged a fresh wave of pain back into Baphomet's mind. That fake doctor said nearly the same words. No, wait. This isn't supposed to be my burden to carry all by myself. You're absolutely right, but what about the fella who sent me flying in the first place? A moment later, Graven showed up and quickly told them what had happened. Echidna paused to think that hurting the Rogue Guild, the group behind Diong, just because of one rookie wasn't worth the trouble. They could forgive the wrong, but they still had to make things right. Baphomet looked annoyed and was ready to yell at her, but Mong stepped in just in time to offer to share exclusive rights to a tower with the Art Guild. As soon as they heard that only the tower had rights, every face in the room changed. In the end, giving up everything in the tower was just like handing over all the magic stones and treasures. It was like a golden egg falling from the sky, so Echidna pretended she needed to ask her team first just to avoid looking too greedy. Once she said that, she spun around and started whispering with her teammates. After a long wait, Echidna finally said yes to Monen's offer, bringing the matter to a close. A moment later, Fina slowly opened her eyes and asked what had happened. Echidna just gave her a quick reply, saying they'd talk about it later. Then the 5 of them walked away from the pool without even glancing back. But as they walked past, Baphomet and Vagina gave him a deliberate wink. Baphomet stood there frozen, totally lost on what she was trying to say. The following day, once the guided mission was over, Mongan escorted Baphomet to a quiet village far away. He told him that a home was already ready for him. As soon as they walked in, a wide-open yard appeared right there, letting him feel close to Major for the first time. It held a rustic charm found only in the countryside, a place that was almost completely empty. Ma-san had already gotten ready for Baphomet to start cursing him out. Before he could even speak, Baphomet jumped in to say, Isn't this pretty good? The weeds just need to be cleaned up a little. It feels spacious, and the house only needs some minor repairs. Mon froze on the spot, even wondering if there was something wrong with his ears. It didn't matter what happened, because as long as he was happy, Maman refused to waste any extra cash on buying him a house in the city. And while they were talking, a figure suddenly flashed past outside the door. Baphomet felt a strange feeling, spun around to look, but saw nothing outside, so he had to tell himself it was just his imagination for now. Then, Mongan handed him the mission, to track down the instructor who trains new hunters for battle and catch him in the act of his crimes. Baphomet wondered why they were just watching him instead of catching him right then. Maung explained that you're not strong enough yet because that instructor is already a powerful B-rank hunter while you are just barely reaching that level yourself. A few days later, a bunch of new hunters gathered with their instructor, who quickly told them who he was. They call me Quartz, a B-rank hunter ready for anything, so just ask if you ever get confused. Baphomet offered a faint smile, since the hunter standing there didn't seem like a criminal at all. But for some reason, Baphomet felt that this man was definitely hiding something. A few minutes later, the group stepped through the portal. Quartz started checking just how strong everyone was. The 3 people standing before him were all acting quite open and honest, which was totally normal for new hunters. But Baphomet was the only one who looked totally calm and easy, and no one could figure out why. No matter if it was his raw power, quick reflexes, or smart fighting, he seemed to have it all. Of course, folks like that had showed up before, and they were always known as dungeon warriors. But Quartz knew that dungeon warriors shouldn't be this good at fighting, so as that thought hit him, he looked at Bahamut once more. Bahamut gave a polite but a little awkward smile and did exactly what Mongan told him to do. Soon enough, every tiny monster was gone. Finally, the dungeon boss stepped out into the light. Everyone stood frozen in terror when they saw the giant worm. Watching how useless they were, Bathema couldn't help but feel annoyed. He pushed one of the men hard to get him out of the way. Then he grabbed the weapon the man had dropped and used his special power. The weapon master stepped into action as Baphomet roared forward, charging headlong at the giant worm. Quartz knew instantly something was wrong, because he understood that wielding a weapon you don't own would almost always do zero damage. He lunged forward just as Baphomet had already rushed past. A single slash cut the giant worm in two instantly, sending blood spraying up like a fountain. Seeing that scene, everyone froze in shock, not knowing what to do next. People with too much power always drew a crowd, and that was the very first thing Baphomet learned after arriving in this new world. He hoped to grab Quartz's attention and get him to follow, and while he managed to win a little admiration, it wasn't enough for Quartz, who simply offered a few words of praise and congratulated Baphomet on passing the test. From then on, Baphomet was officially a hunter who no longer needed any help. Hearing those kind words made Baphomet feel just a tiny bit proud of himself. He didn't realize he had ruined everything until the very last moment. A few days later, the news arrived in Mongan, and it turned out to be just about what Mongan had guessed. Baphomet muttered a curse, shocked that his very first surgery had gone so wrong. No, the story isn't finished because that man is clearly hiding a dirty secret. But now there was no more open way to reach Quartz. Baphomet had no choice but to creep into the shadows and watch him from the dark. He started watching Quartz and figuring out how he got along with everyone around him. Deep within those routines, there had to be a clue that held the key to his crimes. After days of digging for answers, the Quartz did almost nothing but clock in, clock out, and go home. Even Baphomet began to suspect that the bosses had made a big mistake. He considered chopping off the man's limbs to force a confession, but realized that wouldn't work anymore since he was living among humans and had to think like one. Then, Court abruptly broke into a run for no clear reason at all. Did he realize that Baphomet was watching his every move? Suddenly, a beautiful woman carrying vegetables stepped out from behind in the next second. The moment Court spotted her, he sprinted over and clung to her so hard it looked like she'd vanish if he didn't hold on. From afar, Baphomet grinned with satisfaction, knowing he had finally discovered the secret human way. Baphomet sent his plan right away to De Young was totally baffled by the note, which tried to pass off a murder as a simple accident. The next day, after the Court learned his wife was in a car crash, he flew home in a panic. He watched his wife gently clean the wound on Baphomet. Baphomet feigned shock and asked if that was Instructor Quartz. But Quartz ignored him and turned to his wife to ask what had happened. Meanwhile, Baphomet slipped around the house, looking for any clues he could find. Soon enough, he stumbled upon a group photo. He was just about to get a better look when the Quartz stepped in and stopped him. "Hunter Baphomet, thank you for saving my wife, but it is getting late, so you should head off now." Immediately after Quartz spoke, his wife invited Baphomet to stay for dinner, and Quartz had no choice but to obey. A short while later, Quartz was happily gobbling up his food. He even asked for one more helping. Just as he bent down to wash the dishes, Baphomet's face grew tight because she felt something wasn't right. There was a strange, wrong feeling about this woman, like she had been holding her breath for a very long time. There was once a couple who were perfect together, from their childhood days through school and even after they wed. Then the date impact struck, and a flood of monsters burst out of the portals. While the husband battled the monsters beyond the door, the wife stayed hidden in the dark, afraid even to breathe. In that desperate moment, the wife remembered the escape plan her husband had prepared just for her. It turned out to be a teleportation device. Because her heart was too kind, the machine ended up in the hands of those who wanted to do harm. Even as she drew her last breath, the only thing she longed for was one final glimpse of the person she knew so well. The very next day, Quartz used the license plate to find the culprit's secret hideout. He flung the door open, only to find someone standing there so terrifying that his composure vanished instantly. You guessed it, it was his wife. By that time, Baphomet had already woken Yuhayan, but when her memories came back, she lost who she was and her eyes turned dull and empty. "Strange, isn't it? Your wife is here because I made that car crash happen. I just wanted to know exactly how you got involved in the crime. But now it's clear. The key is your wife and we should have died long ago." Quartz's teeth were clenched tight as he growled, "Don't touch her." Baphomet ignored him and kept talking to himself, while I simply let her realize she was already dead, turning her into this mindless state. "So I'm curious what method you used to bring her back like this, though none of that really has anything to do with me." Baphomet threw Yuhan out the window. Quartz tried to grab his arm to stop him, but it was already too late, and with a loud crash, something deep inside Quartz died. Baphomet couldn't figure it out at all. He didn't understand why he was sad or why he couldn't just bring her back again. Murderous fury burned in Quartz's eyes as his mind already tore Baphomet apart 1,000 times. He grabbed his weapon and shouted a curse. "You little bastard, you're going to regret this." But Baphomet didn't act scared. Instead, he pulled his own weapon out of his storage. Then go ahead and try, for I don't mind taking another arm from you. And so the battle erupted instantly, sending us from outside the house all the way back inside. At first, the middle-aged man looked weak, but his B-rank strength was real enough to briefly hold back Baphomet. As the fight went on, Court started talking about how he and I had been inseparable since we were kids in middle and high school. But that day it all came to an end. I patted down Yuhan's body, but the teleportation device was nowhere to be found. That meant someone had stolen it from her, so I rushed to the shelter to find them and avenge Yuhan, ready to make them suffer, only to see that familiar teleportation device waiting right in front of me. The shelter got attacked as well, making Yuhan wonder if he was truly doomed to die no matter what he did. No, we were meant to stay together forever. Even if death came for us, we were still meant to stay together. You've learned a terrible secret that could change everything if I kill you, because then I can fix our past and let Yuhan and me go back to the life we once had. Rage burned inside Baphomet as he cursed your stubbornness, swung his sword, and cut Quartz's arm off with a spray of blood. I have met folks just like you before, the ones who are always shouting about how they feel. The second you pour your heart into your blade, you've already lost. Damn it, I wasted 2 whole weeks investigating, only to end up in a fight like this? If one arm isn't enough, then give a leg too. Quartz screamed in a cracked voice, asking who the hell they were and insisting that whatever he did to save his wife had nothing to do with them, because he hadn't done anything wrong. Yuhyun was the one who truly deserved to live, so what's wrong with me bringing back someone who should have stayed dead? As he spoke on, his words grew absurd until Baphomet could no longer bear to listen. He snapped and told her to stop making excuses for herself. You haven't done anything wrong, yet here you are, knowing full well what you've done and still having the nerve to drag her name through the mud with such shameless arrogance. It seems much easier to just end you right now. After speaking, Baphomet gripped his dagger and began to inch closer to Quartz. Just as he was lost in thought, a sudden system alert cut into his concentration. Emergency. A system glitch has summoned a monster nearby, so hunters must kill it right away. Before Baphomet could look again, a huge claw popped up behind him and slammed him right into the wall. Quartz's vision blurred and his heart dropped as he realized the monster before him was the very wife he had sworn to protect, leaving Yuzin to face her blood-soaked, gaping maw after all his efforts to save her. All of a sudden, a sharp slash tore through the air and ripped the monster's mouth right apart. Baphomet stepped out from the broken ruins. Blood poured down his head as a loud ding announced that Baphomet's berserk power had kicked in. Damn it! Can you still call that thing your wife now? The monster screamed in pain and lashed out with its tentacles, but Baphomet moved so smoothly that not a single attack even came close to touching him. After slipping away from the attack, Baphomet grabbed his chance. He jumped high up into the air. With one mighty swing of his blade, he cut right open the monster's belly. Then he plunged right into its flesh, clutched his dagger tight, and let loose a wild storm of cutting strikes. He kept slicing away until the monster was just a puddle of blood. Pieces of Yu Hunan, torn from the monster's body, lay quiet before Quartz. Quartz shattered completely, but right after the fight ended, Baphomet suddenly felt dizzy and cursed the side effect, knowing he had to kill Quartz before it fully took hold. As the system voice announced the frenzy and movement restrictions, Baphomet suddenly found himself frozen in place. He fell to the floor, too weak to stand. Quartz's eyes froze like ice as he grabbed his weapon and glared hatefully at Baphomet. Yuhan turned into this monster because of you, so you must pay with your life. With a swift slash aimed right at him, Baphomet cursed the system in his mind, only to hear its strange reply. I will never hurt you, for I care about you more than anyone else. In the blink of an eye, Mongan popped out of nowhere and smashed Quartz's weapon in half with a single kick. Then he kicked again, sending Quartz flying straight into the wall like a cannonball. Quartz fainted dead away, but Ma Sunan spoke slowly, saying you worked hard and that the rest is in our hands. Baphomet lay there on the ground, saying nothing. He muttered to himself that he should have killed him before the team leader arrived, blaming the system window for tormenting him since the start and wishing he were strong enough to handle the situation himself, while Ma Saloon and Dion escorted the prisoner Quartz together by evening. They thought the move would be easy, but nobody saw the monster pop out from behind the Quartz. Ma Sanan tried to stop it, but he was just a second too late. Suddenly, the car smashed apart with a loud crash, turning everything into total chaos. Meanwhile, the unconscious Baphomet suddenly felt a strange weight crushing down on him. When he opened his eyes, he spotted a cat that seemed strangely familiar, like he had met it before somewhere. In the next second, the curtain by the bed swung wide. Suddenly, a beautiful figure appeared before him, startled to find room 302 already awake, and upon hearing that familiar voice, Baphomet snapped right back to reality. Wasn't this the same charlatan who made him trade his body to pay off his debt? The instant he saw her face, Baphomet froze in pure panic. He frantically threw the covers off and scrambled out of bed in a total mess. Then he demanded why she was there, but Kim Yuno replied calmly that since she was in her own hospital, she didn't need any reason. But now that I look at you, your body seems even better after a few months. And as she said that, she lightly traced Baphomet's abs with the tip of her foot. Baphomet stepped in and told Kim Yanseo to stop messing around, because now that he had his power back, he wouldn't hold anything back. Kim Yuno pouted and warned, "Don't say things like that, or people will get the wrong idea. If room 302 is okay with it, I don't mind letting something happen," Ma Salmoon said just as he reached the hospital to find Baphomet, but then he heard a scream coming from the ward. He rushed over and yanked the door open to take a peek. He watched Kim Yoon-so tease Baphomet so hard that he actually fainted. After a long time, Baphomet slowly opened his eyes and grew even angrier when he learned that Manan had known all along about chemo. Mong explained that the hospital belonged to a higher-up group, making him and Kim Yanso official co-workers, and his story made total sense. Baphomet put the matter aside for now and asked about the results of the court investigation. The second quartz was said. Maman's face grew dark. He quickly told them what he had seen at the scene. By the time they rushed to check on Quartz, the monster had already torn him apart. Hearing that, Baum flew into a rage because the chance he had worked so hard to create just vanished so casually. Ma-san tried to speak more, but Baphomet quickly shut him down. "So in the end, it just means you weren't strong enough, right? If it were me, I would have made him show the mastermind right then and there." Hearing that, Mongan finally snapped and lunged forward to grab Baphomet by the collar. "He snapped at you, but you're stuck at B rank right now, so what can you do?" By the end, neither one could change the other's mind, so Baphomet stormed out. Mong ran after him, shouting for him to stop, but Baphomet was so angry he couldn't hear a word, so he threw an unfriendly wave and marched away without even glancing back. Kim Yuno rushed to Mongan to hush him, warning that Baphomet wasn't just any ordinary person. She had once watched Baphomet stand on the edge of death with her own eyes. She had also witnessed his strange power to heal himself. And most of all, she had spotted that terrible red warning on the screen. "Ding. You have to save him or you'll die right along with him." Maung stopped dead in his tracks, staring wide-eyed at something he had never seen before. Could that man really help him find the dream that had been buried inside him for so long? A little while later, Deong drove Baphomet home to rest, reminding him that he still couldn't move around much. If the bosses gave her a new mission, she'd reach out to him again because the group approved his break, so Baphomet could finally relax, eat whatever he wanted, and drink whenever he pleased. He had the freedom to watch movies whenever he wanted. But as the day wore on, Baphomet only grew more annoyed, cursing his pathetic, weak body that made everything feel like a chore. Was wanting to be human a mistake? No, and even though he lost his power, that didn't make sense because power could be earned back. Did falling from the highest peak to the lowest valley make the whole world feel pitiful? Just when he was wondering, that red system window popped up once more. "Ding. Are you sad?" That message was the very last thing Baphomet could take before snapping. Baphomet let out a helpless laugh. "Yeah, are you happy now? You're the one who made me this way, aren't you? Why are you doing this to me? Ding. There it all is, just waiting for you." Baphomet sneered. "For me? It looks more like you're trying to torture me. If my goal was to make you suffer, congratulations, you succeeded." The system stopped answering, then beeped that it was running a final count of 999,999 before being rebuilt. "So if you keep trying to block me, I'll just end it myself. This time, success is certain." Baphomet had completely lost his mind, screaming, "Can't you hear me? I told you to kill me." The system's voice spoke up once more, announced that the hacker had taken control and the invasion of Earth had begun, then vanished just as Baphomet stopped moving in shock. Why did the world around him seem to freeze in place? Suddenly, a blue light burst out from one of the people. "I apologize, but since I didn't build the Earth system, I arrived a moment too late." Then another voice joined in, "But don't get the wrong idea, I don't actually hate you." At last, all the light came together into one bright spot. It slowly grew until it looked like a person. She spoke, "And that's when I told you why I took all your power away." Bahamut stood completely baffled, ready to speak, until the woman silenced him with a sharp interruption. "Once upon a time, I tried giving your power to a person, but every single time it ended in death. No matter if your body was ripped apart or pierced through, you never managed to escape that terrible fate. After running tens of thousands of simulations, I decided to try something different and see what would happen if you had no power at all. By the end, the mystery of the unknown variable left no fixed result, so I made the choice to just wait it out. I wanted to see what kind of surprise that unknown outcome would bring me." Hearing that, Baphomet finally showed a spark of real interest. "So, in all those simulations, who was the one strong enough to kill me?" The administrator gave a weak smile and chuckled, saying, "Just as I expected from Baphomet, your focus is truly unlike anyone else's. That was exactly what I had been waiting for you to ask." And right after I said it, the administrator casually drew a few lines in the empty space. In the next moment, 6 shadowy figures appeared before Baphomet, each one a power so great that even his original strength could not defeat them, meaning he had to grow stronger than ever before. Suddenly, one of those figures grabbed Baphomet's attention completely. "Isn't that the Rave? How is he still alive?" The administrator didn't see the panic rising in Baphomet. She kept talking, saying that your greed would make you stronger and that endless craving is the real source of your power. You have to make everyone shake with terror the second they hear your name. Yang. With the administrator watching over us, Baphomet's powers are evolving. The weapon master gets a boost, and the berserk rage transforms into a fresh adrenaline rush that keeps you strong without the usual pain, while 2 exciting new skills join your arsenal. Once the long list of announcements finally stopped, the world around him snapped back to reality. Just as Baphomet had guessed, everything that happened was only a trick of the mind. The red warning window froze him right in his tracks. The ding of the hidden mission finishing signaled it was time to bring down the Apostle of Wrath, collect your reward, and unleash Rave's special skill. Baphomet offered a faint smile as things began to get more interesting by the minute. A few days later, Baphomet was called back again. This time, there were 3 main things to do, and the first one was to throw back a friendly gesture. Baphomet wouldn't lose, so he fought back just as hard. Kim Yunso looked at the 2 men acting like children and let out a sigh of helplessness. The next task wasn't just work. It felt more like a test. Baphomet had to climb the maze tower to grow strong enough to catch the mastermind who caused the incident. The trial day arrived fast, and members from the major guilds had all gathered. The Arc Guild pulled the strings to make this trial happen. Most of the other guilds were just here to grab experience and rewards, including Baphomet. But right now, he wasn't in the mood to hear the Arc Guild speech and was even thinking about quitting. Baphomet wasn't scared at all. He just couldn't handle how embarrassing the situation was. Seeing this, the administrator wouldn't let him off that easily. The moment she started nagging, Baphomet's irritation only grew worse the more he listened. He cursed inwardly and snapped, "Are you my mom or something? You nag so much." Yet the administrator's reply only made him angrier. "How did you know I'm your mother?" Hearing that, Baphomet instinctively stepped back. Because of this, the armor behind him exploded into pieces right away, and the man pointed straight at Baphomet while screaming a lot of angry curses. Baphomet had planned to say sorry and let the whole thing blow over. But this man cursed like a sailor and, once he got going, he simply wouldn't stop. So Baphomet had no choice but to switch to a smarter plan. Luckily, a member of the Arc Guild jumped in right when it mattered. That almost sparked a fight between the teammates. Once the little trouble was over, the speech kept right on going. There were only 3 doors in the maze, and you had to clear all of them before the boss room would finally open. Every door worked differently, and one of them demanded that they kill the monster right in front of them. They had to break the seal before they could kill the monster. The final challenge demanded they dodge every trap and kill the monster within. Now it was time to split up, and as Hunter Irene from the Nord Guild stepped forward to claim a spot with a quick, "Here," Baphomet couldn't help but shrink back a little at the sound of the guild names being announced. Next up were Accessory Hunter and Hunter Thor from the Sungum Guild, plus Hunter Ripper from the Detains Guild, and lastly Hunter Baphomet from the Sweetheart Pink Angel Guild. The air went dead still the second those words left their mouths, leaving everyone wondering if they had just made it all up in their heads. After a long silence, Ripper couldn't hold it in and burst out laughing first. Baphomet wanted to die right then, but he had to kill that bad doctor first before he could even think about his own end. Thor laughed out loud, thinking, "Haha, that guild name fits you perfectly." Once the loud roars stopped, everyone was ready and waiting to go. Baphomet stayed at the very back of the group, quietly planning how to make a big impression in real battle. The moment the door swung open, Uni instantly saw right through Baphomet's plan. She was on the verge of shouting a warning when Baphomet lunged ahead. A ding sounded as Lord Baphomet unleashed his special rapid advance skill. As soon as you step into a tower below legendary rank for combat, you're the only one who can unlock every strategy path and learn all the secrets about the monsters inside. Basically, this function felt like handing him the answer key right before he took the test. The first floor was cleared so quickly it felt like no time had passed at all. Thor stood frozen on the cleared 5th floor, realizing his tough-looking opponent Baphomet was nothing but a fraud compared to the true loser, himself. Just like that, with his special talent leading the way, the team sprinted all the way up to the 15th floor. No one spoke the praise both had for Baphomet. Thor, though, was shaking with pure anger. If that top-tier Bahamut armor hadn't been damaged, the person stealing the spotlight wouldn't have been Baphomet at all. Secretary Wong saw the young master's anger getting out of control, so she stopped Thor right before he snapped and told him to show everyone what real strength looks like on the next floor, while Ripper stared at Thor's armor and started thinking deep thoughts. She looked down at the notes and realized he was really from the Roll Gold Guild. Ripper crept up to Thor and whispered, "Young master of Roll Gold, that armor is a fake, and since there are no records for any Bahamut item, you know exactly what that means." Knowing they were caught, Secretary Huang's face grew hard as he quickly asked what the Ripper wanted. The Ripper smiled calmly and promised she could help them bring the scammer to justice. Once they climbed down from the tower, she asked Thor to help her out, while Baphomet watched them whisper and started thinking about what they were planning. He knew right away that this woman wasn't as simple as she seemed, and the battles that followed proved him right as she showed off amazing fighting skills that made her someone he couldn't afford to ignore. And so, the group battled non-stop from sunrise to sunset, clearing one floor after another. As Thor watched it all happen, they finally made it past the 49th floor. By the time they climbed to the 50th floor, everyone was worn out except Baphomet, who still looked fine. He looked so calm it was like he was just walking around his own backyard, yet on this 50-story floor, everyone knew the real monster was probably hiding in a secret lair beyond the supposed boss room, waiting right where the legend said the final threat lay. Before she opened the door, he turned to warn everyone that if anyone wanted to stop, they should say so now, because she refused to watch someone die right beside her. Of course, nobody wanted to give up before they were done. Thor hesitated for a moment but finally gritted his teeth and agreed because his young master said so, and Secretary Huang had no choice but to follow, a decision Thor would regret for the rest of his life. As the door swung open, total darkness swallowed the room, making it nearly impossible to see a thing. As soon as the lights flickered on, everyone raised their heads to look up. In front of them stood statues made of every kind of stone, each one shaped differently. Everyone stood there baffled until Thor's eyes lit up, and he roared that this was chess, the game he loved best. Just as he stopped talking, a chess piece crashed down and a huge hand appeared in the sky. The hand spoke up, "Now it's your turn," and Thor instantly jumped to the wrong conclusion, thinking the other player wanted to fight him. Baphomet watched Thor play chess, knowing that Thor was truly a genius at the game. He hurriedly took his spot and shouted for everyone to join him, but in the blink of an eye, a huge chest appeared out of nowhere. Thor couldn't move fast enough, so he just stood there as trouble rushed down at him. Just when everything hung in the balance, Secretary Huang lunged forward to shove Thor out of harm's way, only to get crushed himself and end up as a pool of blood. He froze in shock before anyone could even process what had just happened, because someone in the room had already passed away. Hunter Ripper was the very first one to crack the code. She suddenly saw that it wasn't their turn, but the other players' move on the board. The monstrous Baphomet offered a grim grin and declared, "This is the only tower I know," while Thor frantically tugged at the crumbling ruins. All that met his gaze was a severed arm, and Thor crumbled in despair, knowing his own choice had cost Secretary Huang his life. Suddenly, another chest piece fell from the sky, but Unheed darted forward to shield Thor and saved him right then. Ripper spun to look at Baphomet, asking if he knew a way to fix it. Baphomet knew the rules of this game better than anyone. They only needed to wait for the chess game to end, survive until the very last moment, and then beat that thing to win. Sure, those are the rules, but who says we have to follow them properly? Sometimes the simple answer is the best one. The moment he finished speaking, Baphomet swung a hard punch and smashed the falling chest into a dozen pieces. The giant hand gripping the chest plate shook a little, looking surprised that Baphomet had done something unexpected. Shatter every piece you can, because if there are no pieces left to move, the game ends. Then the room's owner will burst out in anger, and that is the only true way to win the game. Ripper really didn't want to admit it, but he had to agree that it definitely worked. Then, in the blink of an eye, the fight broke out. With every piece that shattered, the shadowy beast could hold back no longer and finally burst into view. Suddenly, countless branches appeared and whipped toward the group. But Baphomet didn't panic for a second. He quickly twisted the chain around in his hand. Then he tossed it straight ahead. The axe hit the middle of the branches right on the first try. Once the core broke, the mastermind hiding in the branches lost its power to fight back. The sharp edge of the axe sank deep into its body. Baphomet whispered in a low voice that would burn easily, which was perfect for him to properly test its performance. As he spoke, fire began to climb up the chain around Baphomet, and right at that moment, his special skill Gigablade was activated. The moment the fire licked against the elite monster, a fire burst out in all directions, sending red petals flying through the air like flowers blooming. Baphomet let out a mocking laugh, because this really feels like a real fight now. Come on. Burn even hotter and melt all the frozen anger inside my heart. To Ripper, the line sounded painfully edgy, even though it looked cool on paper. Once the mighty monster was gone, the branches holding up its lair vanished one by one until the floor beneath us crumbled and fell away. Ripper gestured to the nearby exit and shouted for everyone to run. Thor slipped and nearly fell into the deep hole, but his body fought back to keep him from tumbling over the edge. But since Secretary Juan's arm fell down, Thor forgot everything else and jumped after it with all his might. Everyone stopped and stared in shock when they saw this. Just as Thor was about to plummet into the abyss, Baymit's strong hand caught him right in time. He managed to save Thor's body, but the spark of life in his eyes had already faded away. Even if Thor somehow escaped alive, he'd never be able to fight in that tower again and would likely be dead soon. Perhaps for him, ending it right now would be the perfect way to go. Right after saying that, Baphomet let go as if he was giving in to Thor's wish. But right at that key moment, someone else showed up silently. That person glided effortlessly and hauled Thor back up to safety. You're a real scoundrel, but taming you sounds like a blast. And the one who showed up is none other than the busy S-rank hunter, Fina. A long time ago, during an interview, Fina was asked about her perfect match. Back then, she had no clear plan, so she just said that when fate knocked on her door, she would know exactly what to do. Then one day, Baymit plummeted from the sky. He looked exactly like the man she had always dreamed of finding. From that day forward, Vagina knew with certainty that her destiny had finally arrived. But how was she supposed to get his attention? Vagina racked her brain over it. Finally, she hatched a clever trick. By pretending to be weak, she knew the mighty creatures like Baphomet would instinctively rush to her defense. And that, after all, was the plan we'd made right from the start. Thanks to Echidna Slender, everything went wrong because Vagina, who planned to stay awake just in case, ended up falling asleep and causing a big misunderstanding. Everyone had finally gathered in front of the boss room at the tower trial. Everyone around them cheered for Fina. Only Baphomet stayed cold and unbothered, staring silently at Vagina as she dropped her failed plan and tried to remind him they were old friends. After a long silence, he turned to Ripper and asked who the woman was and why she kept interrupting, which made Vagina's face shift instantly from anger to nervous worry because Baymit had forgotten her and she feared she no longer had a chance. Hay stood behind her and quickly told her to calm down and stop making that creepy, love-struck face. After all, the other hunters were staring at them with nothing but admiration, and the Ark Guild had to keep up its perfect reputation. Fina quickly gathered her courage and started laying out the battle plan. The Ark Guild would take on the boss, leaving the rest of the group to guard their backs. Soon, the door creaked open by itself. A huge surge of power exploded from inside. When they peered closer, they spotted a monster with a sword, sitting right on the throne. The system recognized her as Karen, the commander of the Maze Knights. Karen spoke slowly. "Come on, who wants to fight me? You there." The woman he pointed at gasped in shock, clearly not the one he meant. Karen's eyes swept past a nervous hunter who was sweating bullets until they finally stopped on Baphomet. Baphomet's face grew sharp as the heavy pressure from Laura's power burst outward from him. Karen's body flinched, and the monster's instinct to survive made it swing its sword without thinking. Baphomet was ready to call his weapon and charge forward, but Vagina stepped in first to block his way. Baphomet got annoyed instantly and was ready to shout, but Vagina cut him off by saying, "Now is the perfect moment to remember me," then lunged forward with her long sword before he could speak again. A ding echoed as her new power, the blessing of Benegas, flared with a sudden rush of green light that wrapped all around her. As the light vanished, Fina found herself already wearing a sleek, golden hero's armor. The fight started instantly, and Vagina was the one who hit first. Right now, every one of her abilities gets a huge 30% boost for the next 5 minutes. Now every hit she lands with her skills will deal 30% more damage. As her resistance to every weird status effect shot up by 30%, Fina became a terrifying powerhouse with all those buffs stacked together. She completely dominated Karen from the very beginning, giving him no chance to strike back and leaving him on the defensive the whole time. In no time at all, the winner was already chosen. Fina definitely won, and seeing the fight end so fast made Baphomet think something was weird. Vagina let her armor slide off, revealing her true form. Then she landed with a steady thud, and the 2 Ark Guild members stepped right up to greet her. But something about Faga's face looked strange. "The boss of the strongest tower feels strange now, acting weaker than before as if I could have beaten him easily without even using my armored form." Just when everyone was feeling confused, something sharp and unknown suddenly shot out of Karen. In the next blink, it let out a blue glow. Vagina knew right away that Karen was just putting on a fake boss act. The true boss is hiding somewhere else. Before she could finish her words, dozens of glowing teleportation circles suddenly popped into the sky above them. Fia screamed for everyone to run, but Hunter Ripper did the very opposite. She dashed straight for one of the glowing teleportation circles. Baphomet just stared at the scene, totally missing the fact that a new teleportation circle had suddenly popped up right above his head. Vagina lunged to catch him, but she was just a step too slow, and Baphomet vanished into the teleportation circle before she could stop him. A moment later, a drop of dew landed on Hunter Ripper's face. Ripper jerked awake to find herself standing inside a grand palace. Hunter Ripper was so happy she danced right on top of Baphomet without even noticing. She only noticed when Baphomet shouted in anger. The Ripper finally snapped, scrambling backward in a panic. Suddenly, Hunter Thor's voice rang out from right behind her. The Ripper felt even more flustered. She rushed to apologize to both of them, admitting it was her mistake for opening the teleportation circle and dragging everyone into this mess. To make up for it, she agreed to give up every single thing they had stolen from the place. Baphomet didn't notice and just asked Ripper where they were. Ripper explained that this was the Maze Temple, where the research value alone was worth more than any treasure, hiding monster secrets and ancient history in every corner of its design. As Ripper grew wilder and wilder, Baphomet sighed in helplessness, realizing that monsters don't care about history because their only command is to kill humans. It was as easy as that, but the Ripper didn't care a bit. She pointed to the mural before them and told Baphomet that it showed the whole life story of the beautiful and glorious Bellet Kingdom. Once, there was a king named Rizzle who ruled that kingdom with great skill. She was more beautiful than any woman and could cast spells more powerful than any mage. Baphomet paused for a second before vanishing, but he still seemed to remember the very beautiful face he'd just seen. As Ripper kept working, her amazing skill made a neighbor so jealous that they finally started a war against Bellet. To save the king, the current king's eldest son, her older brother Karen, started using dark magic and slowly became corrupted. While the kingdom's archmage let his body go to the branch spirits, he got back powerful magic. Rysel sank into despair because all she ever wanted was for her kingdom to thrive and her people to live in peace. Rizzle cast a spell that built an unbreachable fortress to keep her guards and people safe from anyone trying to get close. Thor spoke first, pointing out that the maze tower was right there. In the blink of an eye, Hunter Thor lunged forward and smashed the mural into pieces. He shouted at Ripper, asking how he could read that news with such a happy face when it was the very thing that made Secretary Huan lose his life. The Ripper's face turned pale with fear, but it wasn't because Thor was scary. It was known that destroying something inside the temple would bring disaster, and Baphomet felt that terrible threat coming too. He instinctively looked up and sure enough, the teleportation circle appeared again. Suddenly, a flash of light struck them, sending the three of them whizzing away again, and right then the system announced, "Ding! The main quest has started, so it's time to hunt down and defeat the tower boss named Razel." The Ripper completely panicked, leaving us three to face the boss, a nearly impossible task. Before anyone could react, Rizzle had already pulled magic together and shot it at them. A sudden flash of bright light filled the whole room, making everyone close their eyes tight. A short while later, Baphomet slowly blinked his eyes open. Now he stood deep in a sea of fire, holding a strange woman in his arms. Rizzle stepped out from behind him and spoke in a slow, quiet voice. "Do you regret it? This memory keeps showing you the moment you regret most. You killed someone you loved with your own hands. You didn't want to do it back then, but if you had, things would have gone even worse. I can help you find everything you lost, and as long as you open your heart, you can begin again." Baphomet grinned with a wicked twist, but when asked if he wanted to start over, he quickly realized there was no reason to go back to the beginning. Suddenly, the trick felt like it was shaking apart. Rysel was stunned, and she shouted, "Hey, if you're going to use illusion magic, at least pick the right target. This isn't my memory. It belongs to the person I stole this body from. I started over because I had had enough of that kind of life a long time ago. Don't run because my hands are itching to throw a punch right now." Outside the illusion, Hunter Ripper hit him hard with her hand. Baphomet's mind came back fast. Once Baphomet finally woke up, Ripper quickly said sorry. Baphomet nodded that it was fine. Yet he secretly watched the woman, realizing her mental strength was truly amazing since she had woken up before him. Baphomet turned to look at Hunter Thor, whose face was puffed up like a balloon, proving that Ripper had just done it. "So, is there any other way to wake him up now?" The Ripper slowly lifted a single finger. "There's one last trick. My uncle said every man has a fatal weak spot, so if we hit it right, Hunter Thor should finally wake up." Baphomet's head went instantly numb, and in a desperate move to save the last bit of Thor's dignity, he grabbed Ripper by the hair and pulled her back before she could strike. Suddenly, Hunter Thor's energy exploded outward with terrifying force. Suddenly, a surge of black energy exploded from inside him and surged toward the two of them, leaving Thor completely wrapped in that dark corruption once the light faded. Thor showed up right before River's eyes, leaving her no time to react. Just when things were getting tough, Baphomet swooped down from the sky. He cast a chain magic spell to lock Thor's arm in place and take all the attacks for himself. Right after that, they crashed into each other and started fighting hard, with neither side able to win. With a loud boom, Baphomet was thrown back, having quickly guessed just how powerful Thor had become. Dodging the blows wasn't hard, but he was too weak to fight back, and Thor's tough shell made it nearly impossible to break through his defense. AIM could only offer a helpless and bitter grin. Right now, he knew he couldn't win, and even teaming up with Ripper wouldn't promise a victory. So the shocked Ripper urgently asked Baphomet if there was any other way to deal with this. Baphomet revealed one final secret skill he possessed. But to use that power, he needed 3 things. The first was standing on the very top of a tower. The second truth was that he had to stand against an enemy he could never beat. For the third rule, Ripper had to make a hole so a hunter could deliver a deadly blow. The instant she heard that, Ripper's face twisted in a sudden, dramatic way. She screamed that it was impossible and that any mistake would mean certain death, which made Baphomet's face freeze with cold fear. He whispered, "Didn't you dream to become a famous archaeologist? If you don't have the strength to fight for it, you might as well end it all." Which made Ripper feel like her heart had stopped for 2 full seconds. He could laugh at her all he wanted, but making fun of her dream was a line he simply couldn't cross. And with that, Ripper swung her sword. The moment Baphomet spoke, blood gushed out of him. Ding! The skill time reversal has kicked in because all 3 conditions are met, so a new body matching your power is being built right now since the old one vanished. The clock ticks down, 5, 4, 3, 2, and the mission is done. The Ripper's vision was flooded with red light, leaving her blind and screaming for help. Suddenly, a silent hand reached out and knocked Hunter Ripper out cold. Thor jumped forward to tackle the dark figure head-on. But Baphomet only tapped the air, and Thor's arm instantly ripped itself in half. Thor couldn't even react before the attack hit him so fast. Trash, are you ready to face judgment? Ding! You've unlocked a skill that turns you into the demon god Balman, and you'll stay in this powerful form until you clear the tower. As the figure hid in the dark, he watched Baphomet regain his power and felt cold sweat pouring down his body. Baphomet looked down at his palm and saw that this new shape wasn't nearly as cool as the one he had before. But at least the familiar power within him had finally come back. The only catch was that the wait time was absurdly long, full 31 million seconds. Even though Hunter Thor fought hard, Baphomet's chain magic wrapped him up so tight that he couldn't move a single muscle. Now he needed to find a way to scrub all those nasty curses off of Thor. Oh right, this kind of job needs to be left to a pro. With that, Baphomet lifted his hand high into the air. He yelled, "Come out." But the silence around him made the moment feel painfully awkward. That made Baphomet's anger explode, and he screamed, "You filthy bug! How dare you disobey my order!" A crushing weight smashed down in an instant, trapping the monster hiding in the dark. It's been ages, and remember that old head of the Abyss Tower, Bege, even though everyone thought the boss was Baphomet. Bege, the boss born with a silver spoon, was the true master of the Abyss Tower. At least things had been that way until that day came around. On that day, Baphomet hauled a heavy sack of holy treasures up from the basement floor to the top floor. He set his bags aside and drew his sword. Then Behe was utterly defeated and forced to give up. But since killing the boss would make the tower vanish, Baphomet struck a deal with Behe. Bege would pass his role to Baphomet and share every lesson he had learned during his life. Baphomet was simply terrible at magic, and by the end he could only do chains. Go ahead and scrub all that messy cursing right out of him. Baphomet's heavy pressure left Bege no choice but to grudgingly reach out and cast a spell. Then a huge boom shook the sky. Baphomet's soil crashed down with a mighty splash, covering Rizel's face completely. Rizel couldn't dodge the kick in time and slid nearly a mile across the ground, finally crashing hard into a wall. "Alright, Rizel, let's finally have a real fight." Rizel dragged himself from the broken stones and shouted, asking where Baphomet found such strength. Baphomet spoke in a quiet voice. "Are you kidding? We're on opposite sides. So you really think I would tell you anything? You'd better get ready to fight." Suddenly, Baphomet lunged right at Rizel. As he rushed in, Rizel instantly cast magic. The spell hit Baphomet right on the head. But when the lights went out, Baphomet stood there perfectly fine, as if the attack had only tickled him. Now that all the little tricks were gone, it was finally Baphomet's turn. Baphomet lifted his hand, and a glowing magic circle instantly appeared in front of him. As the chains erupted from the circle, Rizel sneered at the cheap trick and waved his magic to cancel them, only to realize too late that the whole display was just a distraction. Baphomet truly wanted to get up close and fight. With every blow landing, Rizel found she couldn't match Baphomet's fast pace. The very next strike smashed Razel's mask right off his face. He crumpled to the floor, crushed by a shame he'd never felt before. Once the king and strongest mage, he now lay trampled beneath others. Rizel erupted in fury as his form slowly dissolved into a streak of light. Seeing this, Baimit's blood boiled too, and he instantly ordered Bedge to bring his sharpest weapon. Ba claimed the weapon was gone once the tower fell, and Baphomet stopped dead in his tracks to think about that. Before Baphomet could even blink, Rizel's attack slammed into him and sent him flying several meters away. Rizel finally called a huge dragon into the fight. Even without his old legendary weapon, Baimit was still armed with the one he rented from the Adventurer Guild. But the instant he swung the axe, it shattered into 2 pieces because it couldn't handle his strength. Rizel grabbed the moment and called in more giant winged beasts to join the battle. All the wyverns unleashed their fiery breath at the same time, shooting straight at Baphomet. Rizel shouted that he had to protect his people, his guards, and his kingdom. In comparison, your strength feels like nothing at all. Baphomet spoke from inside the dragon's fiery breath, calling it all nonsense, and in the blink of an eye, a wyvern's head was cut off. No one could even spot the attacker, yet one by one the wyverns began to crash down. Just then, the attack flew straight at Rizel, leaving him totally shocked. Luckily, the dragon slammed open a barrier just in time to catch Baphomet's wild blow. This power came from dying thousands of times, and then tens of thousands more. I got struck by the same holy spear, chopped up by the same brat, and flattened so hard there wasn't even a piece of my body left. But I kept returning to it again and again. Do you know what happened next? I did exactly the same thing, stabbing that evil man with my spear until his blood washed away the shame from my past. I severed his limbs just like the others, let his screams bounce off the tower walls, and crushed his body until nothing was left. By the time I reached the very top of that tower, I had climbed every step all on my own. This power is the one I built with my own hands. And you really think you're allowed to judge my strength? Who exactly do you think you are? I am Baphomet, the tower's former final boss, and now I stand here with a ding. Congratulations, brave hunter. You have finally caught the Maze Tower's boss, Rizel. Now that the tower is safe, Baphomet grabs Razel's heart in his hand, making his feelings even more mixed than before. No matter how hard he thought about it, he realized only a few beings in the world could handle power so strong, yet somehow those very people were still the ones who killed him. Baphomet smiled calmly, and now things were getting really interesting. Just then, Rizel, crushed beneath my boot, spoke up again. No, I won't die. My kingdom and my people need me. Baphomet glanced down at him with disgust and crushed his hand with his foot. You survived by sheer stubbornness, but you are also incredibly foolish for treating a simple tower setting like you were a real king. Rizel couldn't believe his ears, stammering, What do you mean? What kind of world are we in? How could I possibly be a monster? The core was the best proof it was just a machine, not a heart. So when static crackled beside Baphomet's ear, Razel spoke in a mechanical voice to say an error had been found. The fatal mistake in Rizel's power was erased from the record. Before Baphomet could step forward to see what happened, a sudden beam of light flashed across the sky and Rizel was gone. Right when Baim was lost, a voice spoke from nearby. Suddenly, Baphomet appeared right before the person's eyes. Wait, isn't that Hunter Irene from my own C-team, and why are you hiding out here? Soon, the portal to the outside world opened up after the tower boss fell. Fina and the others stepped out of the portal with blank faces, wondering exactly who had taken down the boss. Baphomet stepped through the swirling doorway, dragging 3 unconscious bodies over his shoulders. The following day, Manan burst into Baphomet's private hospital room with a suspicious look, asking if Baphomet had truly defeated that boss. Baphomet's brow furrowed instantly at the doubt in your eyes, his patience wearing thin as he muttered, What's with that look? Are you calling me a fraud again? Ma was about to ask more, but the door suddenly swung open. Just as Baphomet spotted the person walking in, he froze solid for a full 3 seconds. The same man had once lifted him straight to heaven and then dragged him right back down to hell. Team leader Hyo gave a faint smile. Well, if it isn't Mr. Fraud. Baphomet glared at team leader Ho, his face twisting with pure rage. What's wrong? You don't look happy to see me, but I am thrilled to meet our own Mr. Fraud, the F-rank hunter who just cleared the tower. So spill the beans on your latest cheat. Since you're with team leader Ma, I can guess it. You must be the cleaner the higher-ups are training, right? Ma, Sunin, and Baphomet stayed silent, staring coldly at team leader Ho. But Ho didn't feel awkward at all and just kept talking, thinking a fraud like you is perfect for dirty work. But Mr. Fraud, can you really stand up to team leader Ma? After all, he once wiped out 7 harmless S-rank hunters all at once. Before he could finish, Ma Sangun threw a punch, But Team Leader Ho caught it with a calm grip. Team Leader Ma, are you crazy? If we fight right here, we'll flatten the whole hospital. Ma Sanang's face turned cold as she snapped at Juk. Stop testing me, stop gossiping about others, and get to the point. Did Hunter Baymet actually clear the maze tower? After hearing that, Baymet gave a faint smile. He couldn't wait to see those people get slapped in the face. So he stood up, pulled the proof of clearing the tower out of his box, and held it high. That was the thing he found on the ground after putting down Rizal. Do you still think I'm a fake now? Team Leader Ho was seething with rage. Yet the proof he needed was already right there in front of him. All he could do was threaten Baphomet and tell him to watch what he said. He bolted out of the hospital room in a rush. By the next morning, Baphomet was back to his full strength. Acting Director Han took Baphomet to Hunter headquarters to have his rank checked again. The test was run by Dr. Kim Woo. At first he seemed like a dud, but the moment Hunter was mentioned, his whole vibe shifted. He looked grave and said the test had 3 parts. At the start, Baphomet had to touch the blue balls with his hand, or he would lose points if he grabbed any other color. This round challenged Hunter's speed, endurance, and quick reactions. Baphomet listened with a calm look, nodded that it sounded thorough, and decided to go all out for the best score. Not long after, the second stage of the night parade of 100 demons began. The result would be decided by how many monsters he could kill before the 300-second timer ran out. Most of the monsters showed up as tiny ones, making them easy to handle. For the third stage, he had to battle a fake tower boss, and he'd pass only if he could hurt it enough. But the second Baphomet spotted that boss, he went stone still. This guy, wasn't he the one from back then? Interesting. Long time no see. Back then, I was too weak to beat him. But now, is this thing ready to die? A few minutes later, the 2 people outside the room just stared at the scene with their jaws dropped. They didn't feel a thing because Baphomet was just too strong to be shaken. They were shocked to see him using moves just like Rav's, sparking Dr. Kim's curiosity as he wondered if the man who survived the Abyss Tower and the one who died there might be secretly connected. That afternoon, Baphomet strolled home by himself. He muttered to himself that he might have gone too far this time, but realizing the 2 people had stared at him oddly before he left, he decided that since it was already done, worrying about it now wouldn't fix anything. Just as he was deep in thought, his phone rang with a call from Mong, who wanted to congratulate Baphomet on passing the test easily, even though the final results would take a little while to arrive. Next, let's show you how to use the proof from the maze tower. Baphomet listened to the rules and gave the machine a single test run. Suddenly, a flash of bright light exploded everywhere. Suddenly, the system's voice echoed in his ears. The maze tower has been proven to work, boosting every single skill level by 1. Baphomet looked at his list of skills, unable to believe what he saw. Everyone had gotten so much better that they were almost like pros. No wonder the Art Guild wanted to handle the boss themselves. The proof of